I'm going to be talking about vacuum sealing and how do you figure out how much food you need to store up for long-term storage. This is a brake bleeder. The men probably have all used one. Brake bleeder. It's a man thing, I hear. Anyway. Yeah. Yes. You get it at an auto parts store. Anyway, you can seal up jars. This is not to replace canning. This is to seal dry goods. And I liked it because it's an off-grid solution. You don't need batteries and you don't need power. You get a brake bleeder and you get the jar tops, the seal-a-meal tops. And you have one for a small regular mouth jar. And then you can get one for a wide mouth jar. I don't like the wide mouth jar as much because the blue thing comes out every time. But it's easy to put back in. But I was searching online during COVID when I was home a lot. And I saw this method and I had to get it because anything off grid always catches my eye. Because we all know at one point, we're all, unless we have solar, we're all going to be off grid. And you also you can use both because this is a battery run sealer. And it also fits over, I've used it. It fits over the top and it will seal a jar. Now, you don't seal anything that's wet. This is dry goods only. So I'm going to show you how to seal this pasta in this jar. So I will be showing you how to seal that, but I was going to show you, I sealed, and we normally say nuts. This is probably one of the main reasons I got it. Nuts, I did this in 2021. And we're going to open it and we're going to see how they are. Because what happens to nuts when they go bad? They go rancid. So you know if they're bad. So we're going to open it and see. I watched this on, oh, wait a minute. Did I have it right there? There we go. So it was sealed. And I sealed it in 21. They smell good. Yeah, they're awesome. And we had moved, and these were not in a dark room, I hate to say, but they're perfect. The woman who I watched do it online, she said she had done hers 5 years prior, her nuts, and they were good. And so we know they at least last 5 years. And so this is a protein that we all can eat. You can take it with you. It's easy to carry, and the nuts are delicious. So this is something that I would say you might try. And now what you can do is I could use some of these and then reseal it in the jar, and it would stay good longer. So if you're using what's in your jars, you reseal it to keep it fresh. And this can be short or long-term storage. You never store it with the lid on. I have the lid on this one just to hold the flat on till the ring. Don't leave the rings on when they're sealed, because if your seal does pop, you want to know that it's off, just like if it pops in your canning jars. So if this is sitting up on a shelf and it popped its seal, I would be able to tell. It might come a jar or something like that. But if it's sealed down with the ring, it would be a little harder to tell. So this one I will reseal later, but I wanted to reseal this one. And if you're going to seal anything that is powdered, you don't want it to be sucked up into your brake bleeder. So you put paper. Some people have little cloths that they put in, but these are so cheap. I got this one at Cash and Carry. It's not Cash and Carry anymore, Food Savers of America. And these are like $4 something for a box of 500. They're, yes, they're muffin papers. Cupcake papers, whatever you want to call them. So you put something on there, and I've seen where they somebody has cut out some cloth and they're reusable and they just put in, but those are so cheap. And so you do that if you're doing spices. Now this is an excellent thing to do spices with. It will keep them fresh and you can see what you have. And as you grow your own spices, because we all know that we will need to do that, you'll know how many. So you have 12 jars of, so this is nutritional yeast. So I know I can use one of these jars per month. So that's how you tell how much you do. So for long-term storage, knowing how much to do is just calculating your food. If I have 12 cans of corn, I know I can have one a month. But if I want to eat corn every day, or a vegetable, say you have all different kinds of vegetables, you need 365 cans to get through a year to eat one a day. And you got to remember that if you only do 365 cans of vegetable for a year, that's for everybody in your household. So whether you have 2 or whether you have 12, you have one of these a day, and that is your limit. So if you say, oh, we want more in this day, well, you're not going to have any later on. You're going to run out. So to figure out beans, whatever you're doing. So that's vegetables. If you want your protein already canned, your beans, same thing, 365. And if you want more, double it. And that would be 2 cans per day. And you do that with everything. And when I teach canning classes, people always ask me, how much should I can? Well, if you want, I used to, when my kids were home, I would do 365 quarts of fruit. It didn't all have to be the same fruit, but I did 365 jars of fruit, just so we could open a jar a day and eat that. I would do 90 pounds to 100 of broccoli and put that in the freezer, just so that we could eat broccoli all winter. I was going to, when Andy was speaking, I was going to say a tip. Eat in season, but buy bulk in season, your fresh fruits and vegetables, and you preserve them. Learn how to preserve them. Do what makes you comfortable in your preserving journey, and something sustainable. I am assuming we're all buy no sell time. We all know that that is. So when that time comes, you already know how to do it, and you have food put away. So, any questions? Oh, the same thing. I had this rice. This is a pound of rice. So, think about if you had 12 people to feed every day, and you had rice. That was your starch. You're going to, that would be what you would have to feed everybody. So you'd need 365 pounds of rice to get through 1 year. So multiply, if we say 3 years, 3.5 years, you think about it, or even just 3 years. Whatever God tells you, that's what you do. When he says stop, you stop. And I learned that one. And I ignored that. The feeling for me to put food away, because I would buy a lot, and the feeling went away. It was like, stop buying it. But I still bought 2 more bags, and it was wheat, and it was full of bugs within months. And I had to haul it out, and I lost something else. But that's my tip. Make sure that you stop when you get the feeling to stop.
That's great advice.
And thank you. And so if you only have half a pound, I'm going to say, this is a scale, no batteries. It doesn't plug in. I have the battery run one that I love, and I will miss it. But I brought this, and even so, half a pound. I'm going to show you what half a pound is. So if you do half a pound of rice for your family per day, that's what you have. That would be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Now, what can you add to this? You can add foraged greens, the nettles. You can add fruit to rice. You can make congee. And that's where you make a broth. That's why I was asking about the nettle broth, to make broth. You would make a broth, and then you learn how to make that rice dish, and it goes a long way. Rice is just a good option for long-term storage, but you would do this with anything. If you had half a pound of beans and lentils, peas, whatever you're going to have, pasta for a day, it would be good for you to be able to weigh it out. That is your marker for the portion sizes, because weight is better than a measuring cup because of the way things pack down. Usually you figure 8 ounces to a cup, and that would be a liquid measure. Dry measure varies. So it's easier if you have something to weigh your food on. But when you look at reality, you think, oh, half a pound. Well, it's not a whole lot. So you fill your jars up with whatever you have. I'm going to move this aside so that everybody can see how the brake bleeder works. This is the regular mouth, and I have my lid. I may call it a flat, but that's just what I call it. You put it on. It's not hard. You take the tip and put it in the top, and you don't have to push down real hard, but you just have to hold it there. Now, I'd like to say I could tell you have to get to a certain number. You don't. It depends on the food that you're sealing in here, because as Becky was talking about, different food takes up different spacing. So your oxygen, what we're doing with this is pulling the oxygen out of the jar, and more solid, less pumping. This is pretty. Oh, thank you, Andrew. So my scissors. That works better. So, can everybody see? Kinda? If you do this, you're going to get carpal. And you will have a strain on your wrist. So you rest the brake bleeder down, and you're not pushing the hose, you're not kinking it, you're resting it down, and all I'm going to do is pump. And as I pump, it's pulling the oxygen out of the jar. Come on. There it goes. It's pulling the oxygen out. And as I keep going, I can feel a different tension on the pumping action. And I just go until it becomes more difficult to push. It's not hard. In fact, afterwards, I can let anybody try this. And you just keep pumping. I'm using my arm, not just my wrist. And so you want to use good, what is it, ergonomics? So I can feel it right now. It's done.
You don't hear a pop?
You don't. So did you hear that? Did you hear that? Okay, so then you pull it off. And if this blue thing comes out, you just pop it right back in. And this is sealed. And you don't have to buy an oxygen absorber for this. I have done the half gallons.
You've done the half gallons of that?
Yes.
Really?
I didn't bring one because you have to
that would
pump.
take forever, wouldn't
It depends on what you put in it.
Wow.
But this is sealed. I will date this. If I was going to leave this pasta in here, I'm a canner, so this is coming out. You can feel it. So it's something you actually have to do to understand, because nothing is going to say, oh, you go to 15. Now this is something maybe afterwards we can play with. Also, this is a chamber. I learned about this from a YouTuber, Rain Country. She actually lives in the peninsula and of Washington State here. And her husband makes this.
And she does Sabbath keeper.
Yes, she is a Sabbath keeper. Her husband makes this so that you can do odd sized jars, like a spaghetti jar. Oh, yeah.
So that's a small one, but you could probably put 2 of those in there, or maybe 3.
Whatever fits.
So it doesn't.
I do not have one of these. Andrew does.
You can pull it off. It's not.
You could probably make this. I'm looking at you, Andy, because her husband made this. This is his design, and he made it. And the reason why you would want this is because if you can use all these jars, then your canning jars can be used for canning. And right now I'm doing treats in mine. Short term is I have some vegan chocolate chips. I filled the jar up and I did them in just to keep them fresh and keep them safe. Because when you're out in the country, sorry for anybody who's in the city, but you get mice and you get bugs. And it's just best to keep your food in a container instead of in the bags for a longer time. Now, if you're going to use it within a month or even 2 or 3, no big deal. But if you're saving it, then put it in something reliable. So let your mint go wild in your yard, because they do not like the smell of mint. Squirrels don't care for it either. So if you have nut trees, I'm going to try this. I have 2 nut trees and the squirrels have taken every nut. I was just going out the next day and they were gone. So I'm going to plant mint around the trees, hoping that deters the squirrels. Who knows? But yeah, the cayenne and the mint. Also, the brake bleeder will work on this, any canning jar. So if you have garlic that you've preserved, you can seal it in small jars, canning jars, if you're not canning in them. People call them lids. I grew up, we called them flats. And so these are lids, canning lids.
And then the ring is just a retainer during
this
the
only thing this is good for is to hold this on. It's not to seal it. It holds it down, and then the canning process is what seals it. That's what this is good for. When you store it, you never store canning with these on unless it's loose, because you don't want to get a false seal with either this method or canning. You just don't want a false seal. Now, a friend of mine does a very loose on that. See how loose that is? It's not going to hold it down. It won't give you a false seal. That's just to store them. Okay, I'm going to go back to sugar and salt. The larger containers for sugar and salt, because You store bulk in that, and you use small amounts. So you refill your small container that you use in the kitchen with those, unless you're canning, and then you open a bucket and you're using the sugar when you're canning, if you can with sugar. Sugar is not a preservative when you're canning. It's a taste thing. It does preserve appearance of the food, but this isn't a canning class, so I'm not going to go into all that. But what I will say is the bulk stuff, I would go large, because you're going to go through a lot of jars. But if this is all you have, use what you have. In fact, I would go with this. If that's all, these were the only jars you had, and you only had a small amount of these jars, canning jars, I would buy this first and use it on the odd jars. If you have milk, the the powdered milk, this, what is that called? The soy milk? Yeah, milk powder. That's what I would put in these, and then I can grab a jar and use it, because I'm not using big amounts of it at one time. If that was long-term storage, that's what I would put in these. Nuts are what I really bought this for, because nuts without a refrigerator and freezer, they go rancid quickly. Even if you leave them in the bag, even if you leave them in the bag and put them in the freezer, they go rancid after. So, you know, if they're in there a year or two, they can go rancid. So that experiment worked on the nuts. And I don't know what your, oh, I forgot. That was off. So if you use a high fat nut, like a macadamia, I don't know what would be more than that. I couldn't tell you. I would do an experiment and do a jar and see how long they last. So make sure you have a rotation then of on your nuts and any proteins, your grains. What else do I put in there? I do homegrown herbs, garlic powder, oregano, parsley, whatever you grow, and you don't need a 2-gallon bucket for. So, correct. You want to dehydrate it, because that's the only way you store long-term produce at all. You either dehydrate it or can it. And otherwise, you're not storing it for long term.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.